briefly today, I want to make a sort of secular, rational argument in favor of positive thinking, which occasionally gets a bad rap because there's a whole bunch of kind of hustle culture stuff out there. There's things that played up almost as some sort of supernatural advantage, or and I think rightfully we can be very skeptical of that stuff. We kind of want to be at arm's length and just kind of say like, yeah, come on, it's very kind of hocus pocus. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't speak to me as a person who's sort of an engineer at heart and who likes to think very mechanically about how things work. And really, it does have a practical impact, right? And the difference here is that it's not about like positive thinking either A, makes a thing outside of ourselves happen, or B, as if we just positive or negative think and it affects our feelings, which I know again can feel very soft or subjective, while the same stuff on the outside's happening. What happens is it affects the degree to which we can give ourselves a chance to do things. And what I mean by that is that if you're thinking very negatively about an activity that you're doing, whether it's math class, whether it's programming, whether it's computer art, whether it's learning, composing, writing books, you name it, right? Think very negatively about it. You wind up resisting every step of the way, fighting yourself. And it winds up being more draining than it needs to be because you spend the whole time telling yourself, I'm not good at math, or I can't write, or I'm not never going to code. And you're having to fight with yourself in addition to trying to do the actual thing itself. And what's happening, right, is you're locked up in your head of thinking of yourself as who you've been rather than who you're going to become. Who you've been up to this point in time rather than who you can be from this point forward. Which is silly because nobody's done a thing until they've done the thing. You haven't accomplished it yet because you haven't accomplished it. That's true for anybody who has. Does that make sense? And so the difference between, of course, if you're positive about it, well then it's something where you can give yourself a chance to do it because you see it as I'm becoming a person who does this. I'm becoming a person who will have done this. This is something I can add to myself. I'm grateful to be able to do this. I'm excited to be doing this. This is something that's going to become a part of maybe a longer arc of what I do. And it's also why in so many cases, I know it can feel like also, I think some of the backlash tempered to the positivity movement and so on can either as well come from a situation of people who are looking at it as, okay, well, people are going to get overhyped. They're going to set overly ambitious goals. They're going to unrealistically crash against the walls, get, their big morale hit, as we've seen happen to folks, especially in games, because projects obviously have a great rabbit hole of depth of scale of what you can do to yourself in a game scope. And that is why, separate from, and still with a positive attitude about it, I'm a strong advocate, obviously, of small first projects, simple first projects, low-key, small audience, going through the motions, making sure you've just done the thing at all before you're trying to do more advanced stuff. And that's something that has always been true in my own work, right? I very much am a person who practices what they preach. It's not just I tell other people to do this and I help facilitate them doing this, although it's also what I've done now for many years of my life. It's also my very first video course series about graphics, game programming type stuff. It's buried on a separate YouTube channel from long ago. Nobody watches it, kind of out of date, not great. But if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have made the video courses that hundreds of thousands of people have used. Right? My very first version of my textbook, before it was in the form that it's now reached hundreds of thousands of people as well. In the original version, I think it's buried in the archive files, including the thing if someone's curious to check it out. But like, it's completely rewritten, completely 100% different programming language, different sections, different approach, flip the entire order of the parts and so on. Completely reconfigured, but until I had done it at all, until I had exported an ebook and found a way to put it on sale in exchange for dollars, I didn't see myself as a person who could write a book, who could finish a textbook, who could make example code. And then when I had done it, well, now I'm a person who's done it, I can work on doing it better. My very first time running an online game development teaching business, 2009, if you'll believe it or not. And like relatively few clients, mostly one-on-one stuff, a lot of some of that code found its way into my book. Some of those resources found their way into my newsletters that then kind of worked their way back into my current game dev training series or something. But for the most part, most of that stuff is just totally buried, totally gone. But I first had to see myself as someone who can do that. It's the kind of person who does that. And then thereafter, I'm doing it. But that all began from a positivity of, while doing it, not seeing it as I haven't done this yet, so I can't. Not digging in on the fact of like, I don't know what I'm doing yet. But it's rather trusting I'm going to figure it out as well as anybody else, right? Put into this situation, you navigate it. And that positivity, it's occasionally can be a little bit towards the irrational side. It can be tapping into, there is not evidence yet, but that's because I'm working on building evidence, right? I'm going to find it. I'm going to keep digging till I find it. I'm going to do the things so that it's behind me that I'm a person who has made a game, composed a song, written a book, whatever your personal project type angle might be. It begins from giving yourself a chance to do it by not constantly fighting yourself, because it really does affect what you'll let yourself do in your actions. Through that, what happens with other people. And so it really does kind of spill out of us. And then, my last little caveat is, hopefully obvious, but I do like to put a little asterisk next to this that it does not mean necessarily you need to put a positive spin on everything. There will be difficult situations, bad times, rough things, and people got to feel what they're feeling and process that stuff. And this is not trying to say, like, be positive all the time, be chipper all the time. I think this is one of those kind of straw men people use to attack positivity by just seeing it as a, well, you can't be positive all the time. What if, I don't know, just got hit by a car or something that's been very difficult for me? Well, then, yes, by all means, you're right. I think there's sort of a latitude we give people on the internet to be able to figure out as adults, like, does this currently apply to me in my situation? Is this relevant to the spot that I'm in, what I can do with it? Out of which there's obviously so many resources, information, voices out there. Any given person can find something that's not a fit for what they need and complain about it. Obviously, the things are put out there for, okay, if this is for you and you can size up, try on the shoe, see if it fits for you. I found it helpful for me. I think a lot of people in my life have, in terms of recognize the difference it makes for their projects, their teams, themselves, their growth, their portfolio over time. And it really does leave a visible difference in someone's background. Whether they're giving themselves that chance and staying positive about, I'm building the evidence that this is something that I do. I'm getting things behind me. You know, no one's published a book till they've published a book. Nobody's made a course till they've made a course. Nobody started a business till they started a business. And then thereafter, they're doing it. There's someone who does it. They can work on doing it incrementally better the next time. They have a place to slot in and directly apply information and experience and evidence and conversation with peers into practice, and all that kind of stuff makes a huge difference. But it begins from seeing yourself as who you're going to be, not who you've been. And that takes a bit of positivity. That's it for the day. Thanks for hanging out. As always, catch you today. Bye for now.